Night shift at the East Atlantic orbital sweep isn't supposed to be exciting. Honestly, it's the kind of job where you start talking to the coffee machine just to stay awake. My name's Reed Mercer, tracking officer, space trash babysitter, whatever title pays the rent. That night, I was leaning back in my chair, boots on the console, trying to convince myself that the hum of the station was comforting and not slowly killing my sanity. I remember saying out loud, "Come on, universe, give me something." The universe heard me and apparently decided to ruin my entire life. It started small. A faint blip on long-range radar. Nothing unusual. Could have been a broken satellite or rock. But then the alarms flicked on one by one. Ping, ping, ping. Trajectory shift. Size correction. Velocity update. I sat up straight. What the hell? The object grew from tiny metal speck to building-sized mass in seconds. Then the words I never want to hear again flashed red across my entire screen. My stomach dropped. Contamination alerts are rare. When they hit, something's either burning, bleeding, or radiating. The lights dimmed. The station locked its outer shutters. And for the first time that night, I wished I hadn't asked the universe for anything. Within minutes, the docking bay thundered with heavy boots. Military. A lot of them. I wasn't even briefed, just pulled from my chair by a sergeant who smelled like he chewed metal for breakfast. "You, Mercer, you're coming with us." "Why me?" "Your scan spotted it. You know the trajectory. You're in." I didn't argue. Partly because he was 3 times my size. Partly because every instinct in me whispered that something unprecedented had just fallen into human territory, and maybe humanity wasn't supposed to see it. We flew over Black Ocean, the night swallowing every light except our own. Below us, something massive lay half submerged, smooth, dark, and wrong. Not a ship. Not anything human. When we got close enough, I felt the hair rise on my arms. The thing didn't reflect light. It absorbed it, like it didn't want to be noticed. "Is that alien?" someone whispered. No one answered, but we all thought the same thing. A breach team cut open the hull. The air that rushed out was cold, enough to sting. Inside, the hallways bent like something alive had grown them. The floors were smooth stone, but warm under my boots. The walls pulsed a dim, heartbeat-like glow under their surface. No seams, no bolts, no lights, just groan. If the ship wasn't built, it was cultivated. I swallowed hard. Maybe humans weren't the ones being feared here. Maybe this thing was designed to keep something in. We followed the faint pulsing deeper until it led us to a chamber shaped like a ribcage. Pods lined the walls, thousands of them. Metallic, sealed, humming softly. One pod stood open. Steam drifted out. The sergeant motioned me forward. I don't know why. Maybe he wanted me to throw up first, so he could decide if it was toxic. I stepped closer. My breath hitched. Inside was a shape. Small, fragile, human. A child. A boy no older than 6. My chest tightened as if something heavy pressed into my ribs. My brain refused to accept it. What is this?" I whispered. He was pale, breathing shallow, wrapped in strange fabric that looked like it grew around him, but unmistakably human. And that's when the pod beside him flickered. A screen lit up with alien script that translated automatically through our scanners. Cargo status: rejected. Total units: 12,000. Species: human. Condition: stable. Altered: non-compliant. Return destination: Earth sector disposal zone. Reason: genetic deviations. I stepped back, heart pounding painfully. A moment of silence hung between us, long, cold, suffocating. Then the truth hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just cargo. It wasn't an accident. Someone out there claimed ownership of humanity and decided these 12,000 children weren't worth keeping. And as the pod lights snapped on across the room, all of them waking, a signal pulls through the ship. A beacon. Not calling for rescue, calling for retrieval. I looked at the sergeant. He already knew. "They're not done," I whispered. "They're coming back. For them, and maybe for us." The alarm on the ship's console started pulsing faster. Red lights streaked across the walls. The hum of the pods escalated into a low, vibrating growl. I stepped closer to one of the nearest pods. The child inside blinked at me. Not fear, not confusion, just recognition. It was impossible. No human should recognize me. Then the scanner on my wrist beeped. Bright letters flashed across the HUD. Human detected. Earthborn signature. I froze. Earthborn. That's me. A shiver ran down my spine. The sergeant cursed under his breath. You're telling me this thing is tracking us? On what? Smell. DNA? I didn't answer, because for a single heartbeat, I understood something terrifying. The ship didn't just contain humans. It was aware of us. We had no time to debate. The military crew moved like a single organism. Pods were pried open. Children were lifted carefully, wrapped in blankets we didn't have. I checked each one quickly. Alive. Breathing. Shivering. Some murmured quietly, some just stared at the ceilings wide. But all of them human. All of them vulnerable. And all of them forgotten. I glanced at the ship again. It was huge. Matte black. Angular. Almost organic. No windows. No doors. Except the ones we forced open. It wasn't just a vessel. It was a cage. A prison. And someone had tossed 12,000 kids into it like garbage. One pod caught my attention. It was slightly smaller, almost like it was meant for a single occupant. Inside, a little girl, maybe 4 or 5. Her eyes were piercing. A shade of blue never seen in humans before. The scanner hummed again. Earthborn signature detected. I blinked. Her eyes locked onto mine. And in that instant, I felt it. A connection I couldn't explain. Sir, the sergeant said, breaking the moment. This one's different. Maybe the genetic deviations weren't all mutations. I shook my head. This isn't a mutation, I said quietly. This is a gift. The ship groaned. Metal shivered as if it understood. And then a loud mechanical thunk echoed from deep inside. Everyone froze. I swear, even the children stiffened. Listening. The sound wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from within. We had barely reacted when a screen lit up. Alien symbols danced across it. Our scanners scrambled, trying to translate. Lines appeared. Unauthorized retrieval in progress. Return protocol initiated. The military officers exchanged worried looks. One muttered, "Protocol? That can't be good." I knew instantly. This ship wasn't abandoned. It wasn't just dumped near Earth. It was waiting. Waiting for someone or something to come back. I grabbed the nearest kid. He flinched, but didn't scream. I whispered, "It's okay. You're safe now." Safe. A word that felt fragile. In this place. Then the ship groaned again, louder this time. The walls pulsed. Red warning lights blinked aggressively. Something deep inside activated. I looked at the sergeant. "Get ready. It's responding to us." And then, from somewhere, deep within the ship, a sound that didn't belong to any machine. A low, guttural hiss. Like a predator waking up. The children stiffened. I swallowed hard. We weren't just retrieving kids anymore. We were intruding, and the moment we realized that, the pods began to hum in unison. Lights flashed from green to yellow to red. Every screen, every panel, every corner of the room started displaying human DNA, all 12,000 units, all marked, all accounted for. It knew we were here. I clenched my fists. 12,000 kids, no backup. And an alien ship that might as well have been alive. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a single thought echoed. If we fail, they won't just lose Earthborn children. They'll lose humanity's chance. A hum turned into a rumble. The ship shivered again. The floor vibrated beneath us. I realized then, this wasn't a rescue mission. It was a race. A test. And only humans could pass it. The rumble beneath our feet grew louder. The ship wasn't just responding. It was reacting. Alive, aware, calculated. I looked around at the kids. Eyes wide, trembling, whispering. Some started crying softly. Some didn't even blink. Their innocence struck me harder than the alarm. 12,000 children. Discarded. Forgotten. Thrown away like trash. And yet, somehow, they were still here. Alive. Waiting. The sergeant tapped on the control panel. Energy readings spiking across the deck, he muttered. Whatever's powering this ship, It's not human. I swallowed hard. No kidding. Every instinct in me screamed danger. The pods began to shift. Slowly, deliberately, doors sliding open with quiet precision, lights flickering over the children's faces. It wasn't random, it was watching. Then one pod hummed louder than the others. Closer, brighter, and inside, a child that shouldn't have existed. She floated slightly above the floor, not crying, not frightened, not even blinking, just staring, piercing blue eyes glowing faintly. The scanner on my wrist went wild. Earthborn signature detected. I froze. Again, another Earthborn, but she wasn't a baby. Not exactly. There was something different about her. The sergeant leaned closer. You're saying this one is like you? I didn't answer, because my gut already knew. Yes, she was like me, and worse, she was connected to the ship somehow. The ship groaned again. Metal panels shifted. Something beneath the floor vibrated, almost like a heartbeat. The children murmured in unison. I swear it wasn't fear, it was recognition, like the ship itself had a signal for them. I stepped closer to the glowing pod. Her eyes locked onto mine, and the world seemed to shrink. She raised her tiny hand. No sound, no words, just a subtle gesture toward me. The scanner blinked. Earthborn connection. High connection. That word hit me like a hammer. It wasn't random, not coincidence. We were linked, her, me, the ship, maybe even all of humanity. Then the rumble escalated. Pods began tilting. Some children shifted on their own. Mechanical doors clanged open deeper in the ship. Sir, this isn't just a cargo hold, one officer whispered. It's a hive, a network, and it's alive. I nodded slowly. Alive. Watching, learning. The ship had thrown away humanity, discarded the future, and now was judging us. I glanced at the children again, their tiny faces full of hope and fear. We had to get them out. All 12,000, no mistakes. And yet, the ship was fighting back. Lights flashing red, pods tightening, the floor vibrating like it wanted to shake us off. I clenched my jaw. I wasn't scared. Not yet. Because humans, we adapt. We fight, we survive. Suddenly, the smallest child stepped out of her pod, barefoot, tiny, fragile, and yet, somehow commanding. She walked toward me, no hesitation, eyes locked. Her little hand reached out. I realized instantly the ship had underestimated us. Humans weren't just survivors. We were unexpected. We were dangerous. And this child, this tiny human, was proof. A loud alarm blared. Red lines raced across the walls. The ship was locking down. Pods were closing. Air vents hissed. I grabbed the nearest child. She flinched, but didn't resist. It was trust. Fragile, yes, but real. And in that moment, I knew, if we failed, the future of humanity wouldn't just be at risk. It would vanish entirely. The ship shuddered one last time. Then the main hatch, the one we came in, sealed. We were trapped inside, with 12,000 children, and a vessel that seemed alive, aware, and calculating every move. I tightened my grip on the child in my arms. This isn't a rescue, I whispered. This is a war. And somewhere deep inside me smiled. Because humans, we don't just survive, we fight back. The air was thick, heavy with the hum of machinery and the quiet cries of children. Every breath felt like it stirred the ship's attention. The ship groaned again, metal walls flexing like living muscle. Red warning lights flashed, then faded. Then came the vibration, a low, bone-deep rumble. The ship wasn't just alive, it was angry. We moved carefully through the corridors, pods lining both sides, each containing another frightened child. Some stared blankly, some whispered questions to themselves, but all eyes turned to us. They were searching for hope. I felt the weight of it. 12,000 lives, 12,000 children thrown away like nothing. And now, we were their only chance. Suddenly, the ship shifted. The floor beneath our feet jolted. A panel dropped from the ceiling, blocking the path. The hum of machinery spiked almost like a heartbeat racing. We're being herded, the sergeant muttered. It's trying to control us. I clenched my fists. Humans weren't meant to be controlled. We adapt. We survive. We fight. The nearest pod hissed open. One child stepped out, barefoot, fragile, but her eyes burned with something impossible. "Follow me," she said, not with words, but with certainty. The scanner on my wrist went wild. Earthborn signature. Height connection was undeniable. We weren't just rescuers, we were allies. In ways the aliens or whoever sent this ship hadn't counted on. The corridor split. Two paths. One dark, with flickering lights. One bathed in faint neon pulses. I looked at the children. At the tiny Earthborn leading the way. Decision had to be instant. "Follow the light," I said. And everyone obeyed. As we move, pods began to close automatically behind us. Some children cried out. Some froze. I moved quickly, yanking one open, pulling the occupant free. The ship wasn't just alive. It was learning. Every step we took, every rescue, every human reaction. It recorded. It adapted. But humans, we thrive under pressure. We turn disadvantages into weapons. One child tripped. I caught her mid-fall. Her tiny body pressed against mine. Eyes wide, shimmering in the faint neon light. The ship's rumble intensified, almost like it knew we weren't going to give up. And that's when it hit me. The children weren't just cargo. They were the reason this ship existed. The very thing that made it powerful. And that made it dangerous. We reached a wider chamber. A central hub, buzzing with energy grids and floating conduits. Holographic lines traced the room's structure. The ship seemed to breathe through them. The tiny Earthborn child stepped forward, hands outstretched. The grids pulsed in response. And then the pod doors on the far side opened all at once. 12,000 children, awake, watching. Some stepping out slowly, some hesitating, but all aware, all connected. I swallowed hard. This wasn't just a rescue, it was a reckoning. The ship had underestimated humans. Every child it discarded, every pod it labeled rejected, had just added fuel to our resolve. I glanced around at the kids looking at me, and I made a silent vow. Every single one of them was going home. No matter what. Then came the first real resistance. The floor vibrated violently. Energy pulses shot from hidden conduits. Red beams lashed through the room. Some pods were closing at alarming speeds. "Move," I shouted. We scattered, dodging lasers, pulling children to safety. The tiny Earthborn moved effortlessly, as if the danger didn't exist. Humans were underestimated, and the ship was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The chamber was chaos. Red energy pulses licked the walls. Floating conduits hummed like angry snakes. Children screamed or froze, but the tiny Earthborn child walked calmly between the danger zones. Her eyes never wavered. I realized something terrifying and thrilling. These kids weren't just ordinary humans. They were different. Something about them, something innate, was awakening. "Stay close," I shouted, grabbing two children and yanking them behind a tilted conduit. The floor shook violently, throwing sparks into the air. I caught a glimpse of the tiny Earthborn. She was touching the floating lines, and they reacted, like she was talking to the ship. The sergeant muttered, "That kid. She's controlling it." I didn't need confirmation. Humans always adapt. Humans always survive. And sometimes, humans are underestimated in ways the universe regrets. Suddenly, a pod shot forward. An automated defense drone. Fast, metallic, glowing red lines on its body. It moved like it anticipated our every action. The tiny Earthborn raised her hand, and the drone froze. A flicker in its red lights. Then it fell over, powerless. "Earthborn," I whispered under my breath. The scanner beeped. Signature confirmed. Human. Unmatched. The children's faces changed. Confidence replacing fear. Some whispered to each other, and I realized, the moment they believed in their own power, they were unstoppable. The chamber wall shook again. Metal groaned. Holographic grid sparked, almost like a heartbeat. The ship had noticed the shift. It had realized humans weren't just cargo. We were the wild card. I ran to a group of pods closing too quickly. Pulled one open. The child inside had been quiet the whole time. Eyes wide, trembling. I held her hand, and in that instant, I promised, no one would be left behind. Then, a shadow appeared. Something enormous, lurking above the floating conduits. Mechanical, yet organic. It wasn't just defense. It was the ship's guardian. The tiny Earthborn raised her hands again. The shadow hesitated. Pulses of energy rippled outward from her fingertips. The guardian faltered. Humans were underestimated. Even in the eyes of alien machines. The chamber split further. Two new paths opened. One seemed calm, almost inviting. The other, dark, sparking, dangerous. I turned to the sergeant. We don't have time to debate. The children looked to the tiny Earthborn for guidance. She pointed towards danger. Instinct screamed at me to go the safe route. But instinct wasn't always what kept humans alive. Courage and grit did. We moved into the heart of the ships. Chaos. Red lights flashed again. A pulse shot from the central hub. It didn't aim at us directly. It was scanning, learning, hunting. But humans adapt. Humans improvise. And humans, especially the Earthborn, fight back in ways the universe hadn't accounted for. The tiny Earthborn raised her hand once more. The pulse bent away, harmlessly. She smiled faintly, and in that moment, I knew. We weren't just rescuing children. We were changing the rules. The chamber's ceiling began to shift. Conduits retracted. The guardian shadow recoiled. The ship, for the first time, was reacting to us instead of controlling us. I glanced at the children, eyes wide, some unsure, some amazed, some ready. We were humans. We were underestimated. And now, the universe was about to see exactly why that was a mistake. The chamber had shifted entirely. Walls that seemed rigid moments ago now flowed like liquid metal. The ship was alive, or at least it thought it was in control. But humans weren't just tools. Humans were chaos incarnate. The tiny, Earthborn child stepped forward. Her hand hovered over a cluster of glowing conduits. The energy lines pulsed in response. The ship had never felt a human touch like this. I swallowed hard. We might actually make it, I whispered. The sergeant shook his head. Don't get comfortable. It's learning. From above, a mechanical eye rotated. It scanned, calculated. It saw us, then paused, as if confused. The children followed the Earthborn's lead, moving with confidence now. No one panicked. No one froze. The first pod of rejected humans, dozens of children, began to glow faintly. Each of them responded to her instinctively. A network formed, silent, unspoken, unstoppable. Humans underestimated. Humans adaptive. Humans unpredictable. A sudden alarm blared. Red lights flashed violently. A new drone descended, sleek, armed, a predator in the air. The tiny Earthborn didn't flinch. She raised her hand. The drone slowed, then hesitated. Its weapons froze. Even the sergeant blinked, disbelief written on his face. We can't stop her," he muttered. I just nodded. She wasn't just surviving. She was controlling the battlefield. The chamber's floor split into platforms. Some rose, some fell. We had to move fast. Every step could be fatal. The children followed her precisely. She had become the pulse, the rhythm, the guiding force. A flick of her wrist, a pulse of energy. A platform rose just enough to catch a pod about to fall. Another flick. A second pod floated safely beside us. The ship was learning from her, not the other way around. Then came the central hub, a sphere of unknown metal, floating mid-air. It emitted light, warmth, and a strange sound, almost like a heartbeat. The tiny Earthborn approached it. We all froze. Nothing could survive a direct touch here, but she didn't hesitate. Her fingertips grazed the surface. The sphere pulsed, and then bent toward her. It was responding. She had done the impossible, connected with the ship itself. Humans weren't supposed to survive, I said under my breath. The sergeant looked at me, eyes wide. No, we weren't supposed to exist like this. The sphere reacted to every human heartbeat nearby. It learned fast, but humans were faster. The tiny Earthborn whispered, not to us, but to the ship. You underestimate us. You always have. Red lights flickered. Mechanical limbs retracted. The guardian shadow hovered above, but stayed back. The ship, for the first time, feared its cargo. we advanced. Not carefully, not hesitantly, but boldly. Every human child moved like a unit. Every step a defiance. Every action a reminder. The universe misjudged humans. I realized something terrifyingly beautiful. We weren't just escaping. We weren't just surviving. We were asserting our right to exist. And no alien, no machine, no protocol could stop that. A distant rumble shook the chamber. Something massive was coming. Something alive. Something that could crush humans with a single strike. The tiny Earthborn turned to us. Eyes fierce. Jaw set. A whisper almost lost in the chamber. Stay behind me. Let them learn what humans are. And, with that, the pulse of humanity, small, underestimated, unstoppable, prepared to face the next impossible challenge. The rumble grew louder. Metal groaned and sparks flew from the ceiling grids. From the shadows emerged the Guardian, towering, black, and silent. Its eyes glowed crimson. Its limbs were impossibly long, tipped with deadly tools. I swallowed hard. The sergeant whispered, "No human has ever stood against that thing." The tiny Earthborn didn't flinch. She stepped forward, guiding the children behind her. Her presence alone seemed to bend the air, slow the Guardian's approach. The ship's automated defenses hesitated, unsure what to do with humans this daring. The Guardian raised one massive arm. The room shook with the weight of its power, but she smiled faintly. A flick of her wrist, and a pulse of energy shot out. The Guardian froze mid-strike. Did she just? I muttered. Yes, said the sergeant. She isn't just surviving, she's controlling them. The children mirrored her movements. A synchronized wave of tiny hands, and the floor platforms shifted. The Guardian stumbled, unsure. Every miscalculation was human ingenuity in motion. Red warning lights screamed. Mechanical drones swarmed from hidden alcoves. The Guardian roared, metallic sound echoing off the chamber walls. The tiny Earthborn didn't retreat. Instead, she moved forward, eyes scanning, hands weaving through the air. The drone slowed, then paused. The Guardian tried to strike again. She dodged effortlessly, not even breaking stride. A child slipped on the moving platform. Without hesitation, she extended her hand. A flash of energy lifted the child to safety. Every human in the room instinctively followed her lead. I couldn't believe it. Humans weren't supposed to do this. We weren't supposed to survive the containment protocols. Yet here we were, turning every threat into an opportunity. She whispered again, barely audible. You wanted obedient cargo. You got warriors. The Guardian swung again, faster this time. But humans were faster. The tiny Earthborn's reflexes and instincts guided the children like a conductor leading a symphony. Even the ship itself seemed to hesitate, unsure how to react to this unprecedented human coordination. A sudden flash of light blinded everyone momentarily. The Guardian staggered. The children huddled together, but not in fear. Trust in her. Trust in humanity. Red sparks rained from the ceiling. The Guardian's armor cracked slightly under the strain of energy pulses guided by humans. The sergeant muttered, awe in his voice. I've never seen humans like this. And then, a low rumble shook the chamber floor again. Something bigger was coming. Something the ship itself had been keeping hidden. And I realized, the real test was just beginning. She turned to us, eyes fierce, tiny fist clenched. This is just the start. Stand ready. Humans never back down. The pulse of humanity, small yet relentless, surged through the chamber. And for the first time, it felt like we weren't just surviving, we were rewriting the rules. The rumble from below wasn't just the Guardian anymore. The ship itself seemed alive, moving with purpose. Hatches opened along the walls, releasing sleek, black drones, 20, then 50, then hundreds. They hovered, their optics glowing, scanning every human in the room. She didn't flinch. The tiny Earthborn took a deep breath, scanning the incoming waves. Her mind calculated angles, velocities, and trajectories faster than any AI could. The children watched her, wide-eyed, but trusted completely. Stay behind me, she whispered. A simple instruction, but every human obeyed without hesitation. The first drone struck. Metal claws lunged. She sidestepped effortlessly, catching the drone mid-air, twisting its mechanisms until sparks flew. Another drone dove from above. Her reflexes, uncanny and precise, intercepted it before it could reach the children. Each movement was graceful, almost artistic, but lethal in effect. I swallowed hard. This wasn't training. This wasn't luck. Humans, led by her, were rewriting the rules of combat. The ship itself responded. A low-frequency vibration rattled the floor, and the platforms tilt dangerously. The drones adapted, attacking in synchronized waves. But humans were faster. She used the environment like a chessboard, sliding platforms, flipping off walls, using gravity to her advantage. Every child moved with her, every step coordinated, as if she had instilled a fraction of her reflexes in them. The Guardian roared. Again, charging at full speed. She pivoted, using a platform edge to catapult herself, landing atop the creature's massive shoulder. One hand gripped its armor, the other redirected a drone mid-flight, sending it crashing into the ceiling. The Guardian stumbled. Humans cheered silently, no words, just instinct and awe. Red lights flashed. Alarms screamed. And then, the ship's central console lit up a holographic array of controls, pulsing with alien energy. The ship was trying to analyze them, trying to predict humans. It failed. She grinned faintly. They can't calculate us. They never will. Another wave of drones descended. She caught 3 at once, spinning like a hurricane, energy crackling from her fingertips. The children followed her lead, each action guided, each move precise. The room became a blur of coordinated motion, humans and machines colliding, sparks and energy dancing through the air. I realized then what made us different: curiosity, fearlessness, adaptability. The aliens underestimated humans because they measured us only by size, strength, or numbers. They didn't account for heart, for ingenuity, for relentless defiance. The final drone wave approached. A massive one this time, nearly twice her size, armed with plasma blades. She paused, gauged its trajectory, then dashed forward. In one fluid motion, she leapt, twisted mid-air, and disarmed it completely using nothing but precise timing and pure instinct. The chamber fell silent. Even the ship seemed to pause. Even the Guardian hesitated. She landed, eyes scanning the now quiet room. Her chest heaved slightly, but she smiled. The children were safe. Humans had won, for now, but a new warning lit the chamber. The ship pulsed ominously, scanning the walls. Something bigger, faster, more lethal was coming. And I knew this was just the beginning. The tiny Earthborn clenched her fists. "Let them come," she said. "Humans don't back down." The ship hummed, a low vibration that seemed to shake the bones of everyone inside. Red emergency lights flickered, casting the walls in harsh shadows. The children clutched each other, trusting the tiny Earthborn completely. She scanned the chamber, eyes narrowing. Something wasn't visible. Then it hit her. A ripple in the air. The ship had cloaked drones. Invisible, silent, deadly. She moved first. A leap, a twist. Her hand extended not to strike, but to feel. The tiniest pressure change in the air betrayed the first hidden drone. She grabbed it mid-flight, smashing it against the wall. The invisible enemies were no longer a surprise. The children mirrored her instincts. Every small human, every frightened child, moved in uncanny synchronization, almost as if they could anticipate danger. Her leadership was more than skill, it was presence. A signal without words. A second wave struck, larger this time. The cloaked drones were faster, smarter. But she adapted, flipping off walls, sliding under plasma strikes, redirecting energy pulses with barely a thought. She was a storm in motion. The Guardian growled, sensing its allies falling. It lunged again, but she was ready. Vaulting onto its back, she smashed the nearest drone before it could retaliate. She held on as the Guardian spun, sending sparks flying. Every move was calculated, yet instinctual, and improvisation perfected through human grit. I could barely follow her movements with my own eyes. The children cheered silently, gasps escaping in disbelief. This wasn't a fight, they were rewriting the rules of engagement. A loud alarm rang out from the ship itself. Holographic warning panels flashed. System breach detected. Initiating Containment sequence. The ship had just activated its ultimate defense. Walls shifted. Platforms rose and fell like a deadly rhythm. Energy barriers ignited across the chamber. The drones became coordinated. They didn't just attack, they hunted. She didn't hesitate. Eyes darting, mind calculating trajectories and timing down to milliseconds, she led the humans through the shifting maze. A child fell behind. She spun, scooped the kid up, and landed gracefully on the next platform. Every life mattered. Every second counted. Then she saw it. The central core of the ship. A glowing, pulsating sphere surrounded by hovering defense drones. It radiated danger, intelligence, intent. She realized the truth. The ship wasn't just a container. It was alive. It wasn't rejecting humanity, it was testing them. Every obstacle, every hidden drone, every shifting platform, it was all part of a trial. A thrill ran through her. A spark of excitement. The challenge wasn't survival alone. It was to outsmart the impossible. The cloaked drones converged on the core. She calculated. The children followed her silently, perfectly attuned. In one fluid motion, she leapt, twisting midair, disarming the first wave. A second wave fell to a well-timed redirection of energy. A third wave, anticipated before it even moved. The ship hesitated. The pulse of its core slowed, flickered. It had never met humans like this. It had never seen the defiance of a single Earthborn who could turn fear into precision, chaos into order. And then came the final warning: containment breach imminent. The room vibrated violently. The walls shook. The floor split slightly. Time was running out. She squared her shoulders. We don't back down. We don't run. We fight. The children repeated the mantra silently. Every heartbeat synchronized. Every mind focused. The ultimate defense of the ship was about to strike. And she was ready. The central core loomed before them. A massive, pulsating sphere of energy, humming with intelligence and purpose. It wasn't just alive, it watched. Every pulse felt like a heartbeat. Every glow a judgment. The children froze for a split second. She stepped forward, Earthborn instincts sharp. No hesitation, no fear, only calculation. The first energy tendril shot out, striking the platform. Near them, she ducked, grabbing the nearest child and swinging onto a safer ledge. The tendril retracted, studying. The second tendril followed, faster, more precise. She mirrored it, moving with uncanny synchronicity, guiding the children through a deadly ballet. It was more than combat. It was a test, a puzzle designed to crush the unworthy. She noticed patterns, subtle, almost invisible cues. The pulse of the core, the timing of the tendrils, the flicker of the containment shields. Each movement had a rhythm, a sequence. Humans weren't designed to read alien technology, yet she did. Because humans adapt, humans survive, humans innovate. The core pulsed brighter. A shockwave raced outward, throwing several children off balance. She lunged, catching two at once, flipping them onto a safe platform. Her heart pounded, but not with fear, with exhilaration. This was what humans thrived on. The impossible. A whisper echoed in her mind, or maybe it was the ship itself. You are not just human. You are the anomaly. She smiled. Yeah, and we don't stop. The tendrils launched again, now more aggressive. One aimed directly at her. Time slowed. Instincts kicked in. She caught it mid-air. A silent gasp from the children. They had never seen anyone move like this. They wouldn't forget it. The pulse of the core intensified. The ship's warning systems flashed, overload imminent. The platforms beneath their feet began to rise and fall violently. One wrong move, and they'd fall into the abyss of the ship's energy core. She scanned every path, every possible route, every child, and then she moved as one. She guided the children through a series of precise flips, jumps, and landings. Every obstacle neutralized, every hazard predicted. Finally, they reached the central platform, a direct line to the core. The sphere pulsed, glaring, challenging. She stepped closer. It wasn't just energy. It was sentience. It was waiting for them to prove themselves. Her hands hovered over the sphere. A tingle ran through her fingers. The core tested her, probing her mind, her instincts, her humanity. And then, a flash. A wave of recognition. The core accepted her. The energy tendrils froze. The platform stilled. The cloaked drones powered down. The children stared, mouths open. She looked back at them, smiling faintly. We made it. But in her mind, she knew this was only the beginning. The ship had accepted them, but the galaxy had not. Humans were still underestimated, still dismissed, still in danger, and she was just getting started. The core dimmed, leaving a single, holographic message. Your defiance is noted. Prepare for the next trial. The words echoed in her mind. The children looked at her, fear replaced with awe. She had led them through the impossible. They had survived. They had won, but she knew the next challenge would demand even more, even faster reflexes, even sharper minds, even greater courage. The children followed her, hesitant but trusting. The corridors ahead pulsed with alien energy, lights flickering in impossible patterns. It wasn't just physical danger anymore. This was mental, a test of intellect, intuition, and instinct. She paused for a moment, listening. The hum of the ship shifted almost conversational. It challenged them, not with brute force, not with weapons, with puzzles, complex sequences of light, sound, and motion. The first puzzle appeared, a series of floating glyphs, spinning mid-air. Touch the wrong one and an energy pulse would surge through the floor. The children froze. She exhaled. Look for patterns, she said. Not random. There's always a sequence. She reached out with practiced calm, fingers tracing the glyphs. Her mind worked like a supercomputer, but with intuition only humans possessed. Click. A glyph lit up. Another. The floor stabilized. The children copied her motions. The next trial came instantly. A holographic maze erupted around them, shifting walls and floors. The corridors twisted impossibly, gravity fluctuating without warning. Most species would panic. Most humans would, too, but not her. She smiled. Keep your eyes sharp. Watch the flow. She noticed subtle clues, tiny shifts in the hologram's light patterns, micro changes in the air pressure. The maze wasn't random. It had rules. And humans were masters of rule breaker. A child stumbled. Her hand shot out instinctively, pulled them back just as the wall closed in. Another tried to rush ahead. She slowed them with a gentle push, guiding, correcting, teaching as she moved. Every step built trust. Every step reinforced human ingenuity. The final test of this chamber appeared, a holographic projection of the ship itself, hundreds of meters tall, with dozens of nodes blinking red. Each node had a connection line. Trigger the wrong node and the system would reset. The children watched, eyes wide, as she stepped forward. This is about more than reflexes, she said quietly. It's about understanding, connecting, thinking like them to beat them. She traced the lines, observing, predicting. The ship watched, pulsing faster. She saw the logic. She felt the logic. And then, she acted. Node by node, she deactivated the dangers, rerouted the energy, and aligned the system. The hologram stilled. The ship hummed approval. The children stared. They had witnessed something no alien had likely predicted. A human not only surviving but mastering alien systems instinctively. She met their eyes. Remember this, she said. Humans aren't just survivors. We adapt. We outhink. We don't quit. A new holographic message appeared above the core. Impressive. Mental acuity acknowledged. Prepare for final evaluation. Her stomach tightened. The previous trials had been brutal, but this, the final trial, would be unlike anything they had faced. Physical, mental, emotional, all rolled into one. She glanced at the children. They were scared but inspired. And that was all she needed. Humans were underestimated, ignored, dismissed, but they were never irrelevant. Not on this ship. Not in this galaxy. The lights dimmed. The corridors ahead shifted into a massive arena. The final trial awaited, and she could already feel it. Whatever was coming next would demand everything. The massive arena stretched before them. A dome of shimmering energy enclosed the space, walls shifting and bending as if alive. The floor rippled with light, forming patterns that disoriented every alien observer. The children whispered among themselves, but she held up a hand. Focus. Watch me. Follow my lead. The ship had one message. Final evaluation. Complete or fail. She didn't flinch. Her instincts were screaming. Her heart raced but controlled. This was the moment humans had been preparing for, unknowingly, for millennia. First came the physical tests. Gravity shifted without warning. Platforms rose and fell. Energy barriers snapped into place at random intervals. Alien cadets struggled, flailing. Humans adapted. She moved like a shadow, guiding the children. Every leap precise, every step calculated, every decision instinctively correct. Even when a massive energy beam cut across the arena, she ducked, rolled, and pulled the nearest child to safety. Then the mental trials began. A holographic puzzle floated mid-air. Thousands of nodes, connecting and disconnecting at a dizzying speed. Alien observers hesitated, confused. She smiled. Patterns. Humans saw patterns where others only saw chaos. She directed the children. Follow the flow. Trust the connections. Together, they aligned the nodes. The system stabilized. The ship's pulse slowed, a clear sign of approval. Emotional endurance was next. A projection of Earth appeared, twisted and broken. Screams, fears, and memories were projected into the arena. Each child saw visions of loss, hunger, abandonment. Some froze. Some cried. She stepped forward, voice calm but strong. We can't let fear control us. Look at me. Look at each other. We're stronger together. The children focused. Human resilience was shining through. The projections faltered. The arena's pulse stabilized. A sudden shockwave rattled the dome. The final guardian emerged, an alien sentinel, massive, multi-limbed, energy surging across its body. It moved with precision and speed no human should survive. But she did. She dodged, countered, and guided the children to move in perfect sync. Every strike, every leap, every maneuver highlighted human creativity and adaptability. Alien observers gasped. Humans were defying expectations, not with brute force, not with alien tech, with instinct, strategy, grit. After what felt like an eternity, the Sentinel paused. It lowered its arms. The dome's lights dimmed, then stabilized. A holographic projection appeared, evaluation complete. Humans surpass expectations, she exhaled. The children cheered softly, awe in their eyes. They had survived. They had succeeded. Against impossible odds, she looked around the arena. Every alien observer was stunned. Every system she interacted with now acknowledged one undeniable truth. Humans were exceptional. She knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy would remember this day. Humans weren't just survivors. They were innovators, thinkers, fighters, and now, they were recognized. The doors to the next chamber opened. A new challenge awaited, even greater than the last. And she smiled. Knowing humanity's story was just beginning, the doors to the next chamber groaned open. A metallic gust of air swept through the evaluation hall. The children clutched each other's hands, wide-eyed. She stayed calm. This is it. Whatever's waiting, we handle it together. The room was massive. Not just big, impossibly vast. Ceiling vanished into shadows. Walls shimmered with alien runes pulsing faintly. And at the center, a single, enormous console. It was alive, or at least, it felt alive. A low hum filled the chamber, vibrating through bones and hearts alike. The children froze. Even the aliens outside the chamber paused, uncertain. She stepped forward. Her instincts screamed caution, but her mind assessed every variable, every shadow, every movement, every flicker of the lights. A holographic map suddenly erupted from the console. Stars, systems, unknown galaxies, constellations humans had never charted, and blinking amidst them red dots, thousands of red dots. Each one represented a human colony, or what used to be. Her stomach twisted. This is why we were marked, she whispered. The children looked at her, seeking guidance. She met their eyes. Listen carefully. We move fast, think faster. Humanity depends on us right now. Then the Sentinel's voice boomed, not mechanical, but intelligent, sentient. You have Survived. You have proven your species is adaptable. But understanding comes next. Knowledge is the ultimate weapon. The console shifted. Data streamed toward them in impossible amounts. Alien history, battle strategies, genetic experiments. The children gasped. Some tried to turn away. She held out a hand. Take it in. We can handle it. Remember, knowledge is power, but we decide how to use it. Hours or maybe minutes passed. Time felt fractured. She guided the children, pointing out patterns in alien data, highlighting weaknesses, teaching them to anticipate outcomes. Even the alien observers watched, fascinated. A human leading other humans through alien strategy, effortlessly. Then, a final warning flashed across the console. Humanity's future is not secure. The galaxy is watching. Prepare for escalation. The words struck like a hammer. She clenched her fists. The children rallied around her. Their fear turned into resolve. Their resolve into determination. This wasn't just a test anymore. It was a call to arms. Not with weapons. Not yet. With intelligence. With grit. With humanity's unpredictable edge. The chamber door sealed behind them. Ahead, darkness. Unknown threats. But she wasn't afraid. Humans had survived impossible odds before. And now, with the galaxy's eyes on them, they would do it again. She turned to the children. Stay close. Trust me. We've got this. They nodded. And together, they stepped forward into the unknown.
The darkness ahead wasn't empty. It moved. Shadows twisted into shapes. Massive and alien. Unlike anything human eyes had seen. She felt it in her gut. This was more than a test. This was the real thing. Stay behind me, she said to the children. Her voice was calm, but her senses were razor-sharp. Every flicker of light, every whisper of motion, she noticed. A hulking shape emerged from the shadows. Its skin shimmered metallic blue. Eyes, dozens of them, tracked every heartbeat in the room. Its limbs twisted in ways no human body could replicate. And then it spoke. Not with words humans could understand, but directly into their minds. Intruders. Humanity is forbidden here. The children froze. Some whimpered, but she didn't flinch. She stepped forward. Her mind raced. Outnumbered, outgunned, outclassed, but never outsmarted. The alien advanced, swinging a massive arm. She dodged. Not a human dodge. Something faster. Something precise. Her reflexes, honed through every trial, moved before instinct could catch up. One child tripped behind her. She caught them mid-fall, flipped them to safety, and rolled to her feet in one fluid motion. The alien hesitated. Humans' unexpected dot, it attacked again. This time faster, more aggressive. But humans had their edge. She noticed the rhythm in its movement, a tiny pattern in the chaos. Children, mirror me. She shouted. They mimicked her stance. Dodged. When she dodged, reacted before she even touched them. And then she did the impossible. She grabbed the alien's arm mid-swing and twisted, not to kill but to unbalance. It staggered, stunned by human ingenuity. The children cheered quietly, under their breath. They were learning, and the alien, realizing this wasn't like the other species it had faced, paused, cautious, respectful, terrified of human unpredictability. She knew the battle wasn't over. But humanity had made its mark. One small victory. One undeniable. Proof that humans weren't just survivors. They were game changers. She looked at the children. Their eyes shone with fear. Yes, but also defiance. You're stronger than you know. Remember that. The alien retreated. For now, a low hum echoed, almost like a promise. It would return. And next time, it wouldn't underestimate them. Humans had survived the impossible before. And this galaxy was about to find out why. Silence settled for only a few moments. The alien threat had withdrawn, but the tension didn't fade. Every shadow seemed to move. Every flicker of light whispered danger. She knew they had only bought time, not safety, not victory. The children huddled close, eyes wide, hearts racing. She crouched, scanning every corner, every inch of the hall. They're learning. They need confidence. Her mind calculated, anticipating the alien's return. Pattern, speed, strength, weakness. Humans weren't the strongest, but they were the cleverest, and cleverness could win wars. The sound came first, a soft metallic thrum, then a shiver through the floor. Then the alien swarm appeared. Not one, not a few. Dozens, eyes, limbs, and technology fused into a terrifying wave. They moved with precision, but there was hesitation too. Humans had disrupted their rhythm before. She stepped forward, fists clenched. Stay together. Watch me. Follow my lead. The children mirrored her movements. Every dodge, every parry, every step they took was synchronized. Not instinct. Not luck. Strategy. Humanity. The aliens attacked like a storm. She blocked, twisted, rolled, dodged, flipping one child out of the path of a swinging limb. She countered, pushing back with brute determination and sheer human ingenuity. One alien lunged at her from above. Time slowed in her mind. She grabbed its wrist midair and spun. Using its momentum to send it crashing into a wall. A domino effect followed. The swarm staggered. Humans weren't supposed to move like this. The children began to fight back. Small but coordinated. A punch here, a kick there. And every strike counted. Every move disrupted the alien flow. It was chaotic, but beautiful. The galaxy had never seen humans adapt this fast, and then a new sound. A deep, resonant roar from beyond the hall. The enemy's leader, bigger, smarter, deadlier, and now, fully aware of the human threat, she gritted her teeth. The fight had just escalated. Humans were no longer victims. They were the spark that could ignite the entire galaxy. The children looked to her. She smiled faintly, fierce but reassuring. Stay sharp. This is just the beginning. The leader's shadow loomed, and the final battle was drawing near. The hall shook with the alien leader's approach. Every floor panel hummed, vibrating with the threat of massive strength. The swarm behind it moved cautiously, now hesitation. Humans had done something they weren't supposed to. She squared her shoulders, taking a deep breath. No fear, only focus. The children clustered behind her, small but determined. Each one carried a spark of human ingenuity. Every eye watched her. Every heartbeat synchronized. Follow my lead, she whispered, voice calm but commanding. We may be outnumbered, but we will not break. The leader charged. Metallic claws slicing through the air. She timed her move perfectly. A duck, a roll, a grab of a wall-mounted energy conduit. She swung herself, crashing into the leader's flank. The swarm surged to protect it. She spun, kicking one alien off balance, then another. The children copied, small but precise. Every move calculated. Every strike amplified. Humans weren't the strongest, but they were unpredictable. And that was their weapon. The leader recovered quickly. Its eyes glowed, scanning, analyzing. It recognized the pattern, the flaw, the spark of humanity that refused to yield. And then it hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty flashed in its gaze. Humans were different, dangerous, a synchronized counterattack. She and the children moved as one. A series of flips, dodges, and pushes disrupted the swarm entirely. The leader faltered. The humans advanced. Victory wasn't assured. But for the first time, the balance had shifted. The hall filled with energy, tension, and the unmistakable scent of human determination. They were not just surviving. They were standing tall. The leader's roar echoed across the hall. A massive shadow fell from above, blocking the exit. And the humans realized the real battle had only just begun. The hum wasn't mechanical. That's what scared her most. It wasn't the clean vibration of engines, or the sharp whine of weapons charging. This sound was deep, slow, like something breathing for the first time in a very long while. The floor beneath their feet pulsed once, then again. Lights, if you could call them, that dimmed across the chamber. The soft glow inside the walls shifted from blue to a warning amber, as if the ship itself was nervous. The elites froze, not just paused. They stopped. One of them tilted its head slightly, armor plates twitching in a pattern she hadn't seen before. Fear. The leader turned sharply toward the ceiling, emitting a sharp signal that echoed through the chamber. The swarm answered immediately, backing away in a wave of synchronized retreat. That was all she needed to see. "You see that?" she said quietly to the children. "They're scared." A girl near the front whispered, "Of what?" Before she could answer, the hum deepened. The far wall split open, not with force, but like a wound slowly reopening. Layers of material peeled back, folding into themselves with surgical precision. Behind it was darkness. Not empty darkness. Occupied. Darkness. Something massive shifted inside. Not moving forward, stretching. Like a creature waking after centuries of sleep, a voice filled the chamber. Not spoken. Not broadcast. It pressed directly into their minds. Unauthorized variables detected. Several children cried out, clutching their heads. She dropped to one knee, teeth clenched, forcing herself to stay conscious. The voice continued, cold and vast. "Cargo deviation exceeds tolerance. Correction protocol initiated." The leader prostrated itself immediately, flattening against the floor. The elites followed, their dominance gone in an instant. That told her everything. "This isn't their ship," she muttered. "They're just middlemen." The darkness shifted again, and something emerged. Not a body, a presence, a towering lattice of energy and matter, shaped vaguely humanoid, but constantly rearranging, as if it couldn't decide what form reality required. Symbols burned across its surface, languages older than Earth, older than most stars. The children stared in silence. One whispered, almost reverent, "Is that God?" She shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "That's a machine. That thinks it is." The entity's attention turned toward them. She felt it scanning not their bodies, but their choices. Their defiance. Their refusal to behave as cargo. Species designation. Human. Status. Improper containment. Outcome. Scheduled erasure. The word erasure hit harder than death. She stood. Every instinct screamed at her to kneel. She didn't. "Hey," she said, voice echoing louder than it should have. "You don't get to decide that." The chamber went still. Even the ship seemed to hold its breath. The entity focused on her fully now. Individual resistance is statistically irrelevant. She smiled, bloodied and exhausted. "Yeah," she said. "That's what everyone thinks." Behind her, the children stood too. Not because she told them to. Because they chose to. And that choice made the entity hesitate. Just for a fraction of a second. But in systems like this, hesitation was a flaw. And humanity had always been very good at finding flaws. The entity did not advance, yet the air itself felt heavier, like the room had accepted a new set of rules without asking permission. Gravity pressing down just enough to make every child shift their stance, knees flexing, shoulders tightening, breaths turning shallow, not pain exactly, more like reality asserting authority. Some of the younger ones swayed, catching themselves on instinct, while the older kids clenched their teeth and stayed upright. refusing to bend more than necessary, not because they understood what was happening, but because something inside them rejected the idea of submission. The machine's surface rippled faintly, patterns moving beneath its shell, light folding into itself as the scan resumed, this time slower, more deliberate, not just measuring bodies, but searching beyond flesh and bone, beyond blood chemistry and neural pathways, pushing into places that were never meant to be quantified. Inside their minds, memories surfaced without warning. Scraped knees on concrete, scraped knuckles from fights they refused to lose, nights spent hungry but unbroken, voices telling them they were too small, too weak, too human, moments when giving up would have been easier, but never chosen. The pressure shifted again, not stronger, just more focused, like a finger pressing against a bruise to test how much resistance remained. And the entity paused, as if something in the results did not align with expectation. Soft harmonic sound filled the chamber, not a warning, not an alarm, more like confusion rendered into vibration. The kind of noise a system makes when it encounters a variable it was never programmed to solve. Across the room, the instructors exchanged uneasy glances, hands hovering near control interfaces they suddenly did not trust because the readouts were no longer clean, no longer predictable, the data spiking and flattening in strange cycles that refused to settle. The children felt it too, a shift in the atmosphere, subtle but unmistakable, like the moment before a storm changes direction. And without speaking, without signaling, several of them straightened their backs. Not defiant in posture, but firm, grounded, present. The scan completed with a prolonged resonance, the light retracting into the entity's core. And for the first time since it had entered the chamber, it hesitated, not moving away, not advancing, simply recalculating. On the display wall, new symbols appeared, layered over the old classifications. Lines of alien script rearranging themselves, adjusting priorities, reevaluating threat parameters. And buried beneath the technical noise was a single translated phrase that made every adult in the room go still. Assessment incomplete. Subject: response exceeds predictive models. Adaptive resistance confirmed. The silence that followed was heavier than the pressure had ever been, because in that moment it became clear that the machine had not found weakness. It had found something worse, something it could not control, something that refused to behave as cargo, as specimens, or as victims. And somewhere deep within its systems, a new designation began to form, one that had never existed before. Not a classification, not a warning, but a realization that whatever these children were, they were no longer disposable. The room did not erupt into chaos. It did something far more unsettling. It stayed quiet. Too quiet, the kind of silence that settles in when everyone realizes the situation is shifted and no one knows who's actually in control anymore. The entity remained where it was, suspended and still, but its internal glow no longer held the same steady rhythm, light patterns looping and restarting as if it were rethinking conclusions it had already finalized once before. One of the senior officers cleared his throat. A small sound that echoed louder than it should have, and even that seemed to draw the entity's attention, its surface rotating slightly, not toward the children, but toward the humans standing behind them. That was the moment the realization hit, sharp and uncomfortable. The scan had not just evaluated the kids. It had compared them, measured them against the adults, the systems, the assumptions, and whatever calculation it was running now did not favor the observers. A quiet alert flashed across the command display. Not red, not urgent, but unmistakably wrong. Probability deviation detected. Outcome uncertainty rising. Predictive authority compromised. And the technicians froze because those words were never supposed to appear together. The children felt it before anyone explained it. The pressure easing just a fraction. Enough to breathe again, enough to stand taller, as if the invisible weight that had tried to bend them had decided it was no longer worth the effort. One girl near the center shifted her feet and looked up at the entity, not with fear, not with anger, but with something far more dangerous, expectation, like she was waiting to see what it would do next. Across the chamber, a younger boy laughed, not loudly, not mockingly, just a short breath of sound that slipped out before he could stop it, and several heads turned toward him in alarm. But nothing happened. No retaliation, no correction, only another pause. The entity adjusted again, internal structures tightening, its light dimming to a narrower spectrum. As if narrowing focus, and a new stream of data rolled across the screens, translating faster now. Less filtered. Subject group demonstrates non-compliant psychological cohesion. Resistance is not isolated. Behavioral variance synchronized. Designation revision required. No one spoke, because everyone understood what that meant. The children were not anomalies anymore. They were a pattern. A command was issued from the observation deck, calm on the surface, but edged with strain, requesting retrieval authorization, suggesting containment protocols, pushing for distance, but the request lingered unanswered, stuck in queue, waiting for clearance that did not come. The entity responded first. It emitted a low-frequency pulse that washed across the chamber. Not forceful, not invasive. More like a question asked in a language no one had prepared to answer. And this time, the children did not brace. They stayed where they were, grounded, steady, eyes forward, not because they were brave, but because something deep and stubborn inside them refused to move just because something else expected them to. The pulse faded, the light stabilized, and for the first time since humanity had found the ship, the unspoken fear shifted direction, no longer centered on what these children were, but on what would happen if the galaxy realized they existed. Because whatever line had just been crossed, it was clear now. The observers were no longer studying a discarded mistake. They were standing in front of a future that refused to be managed. And somewhere far beyond Earth's orbit, systems that had once labeled this cargo as rejected quietly began to flag a new concern. Human adaptive resilience confirmed. Escalation probability rising. Recommend observation from a distance. Which, for the first time, sounded a lot like fear. The room did not erupt into chaos. It did something far more unsettling. It stayed quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that settles in when everyone realizes the situation has shifted and no one knows who's actually in control anymore. The entity remained where it was, suspended and still, but its internal glow no longer held the same steady rhythm. Light patterns looping and restarting as if it were rethinking conclusions it had already finalized once before. One of the senior officers cleared his throat. A small sound that echoed louder than it should have, and even that seemed to draw the entity's attention, its surface rotating slightly, not toward the children, but toward the humans standing behind them. That was the moment the realization hit, sharp and uncomfortable. The scan had not just evaluated the kids. It had compared them, measured them against the adults, the systems, the assumptions. And whatever calculation it was running now did not favor the observers. A quiet alert flashed across the command display. Not red, not urgent, but unmistakably wrong. Probability deviation detected. Outcome uncertainty rising. Predictive authority compromised. And the technicians froze because those words were never supposed to appear together. The children felt it before anyone explained it. The pressure easing just a fraction. Enough to breathe again, enough to stand taller, as if the invisible weight that had tried to bend them had decided it was no longer worth the effort. One girl near the center shifted her feet and looked up at the entity, not with fear, not with anger, but with something far more dangerous, expectation, like she was waiting to see what it would do next. Across the chamber, a younger boy laughed, Not loudly, not mockingly. Just a short breath of sound that slipped out before he could stop it, and several heads turned toward him in alarm. But nothing happened. No retaliation. No correction. Only another pause. The entity adjusted again. Internal structures tightening, its light dimming to a narrower spectrum, as if narrowing focus, and a new stream of data rolled across the screens, translating faster now. Less filtered. Subject group demonstrates non-compliant psychological cohesion. Resistance is not isolated. Behavioral variance synchronized. Designation revision required. No one spoke, because everyone understood what that meant. The children were not anomalies anymore. They were a pattern. A command was issued from the observation deck, calm on the surface, but edged with strain, requesting retrieval authorization, suggesting containment protocols, pushing for distance. But the request lingered unanswered, stuck in queue, waiting for clearance that did not come. The entity responded first. It emitted a low-frequency pulse that washed across the chamber. Not forceful, not invasive. More like a question asked in a language no one had prepared to answer. And this time, the children did not brace. They stayed where they were, grounded, steady, eyes forward, not because they were brave, but because something deep and stubborn inside them refused to move just because something else expected them to. The pulse faded, the light stabilized, and for the first time since humanity had found the ship, the unspoken fear shifted direction, no longer centered on what these children were, but on what would happen if the galaxy realized they existed. Because whatever line had just been crossed, it was clear now. The observers were no longer studying a discarded mistake. They were standing in front of a future that refused to be managed. And somewhere far beyond Earth's orbit, systems that had once labeled this cargo as rejected quietly began to flag a new concern. Human adaptive resilience confirmed. Escalation probability rising. Recommend observation from a distance. Which, for the first time, sounded a lot like fear. The observation deck was silent. The human children standing still had shifted the entire dynamic. The room that once felt like a cage now felt uncertain, like the balance had quietly tipped. The alien observers exchanged glances, subtle movements, tiny flickers of antennae, glowing eyes narrowing, but they did not approach. Not yet. Computers hummed, lights blinking, translating the pulses into readable data. But the patterns made no sense within the parameters the observers had expected. Every child seemed to pulse with a quiet defiance, subtle, almost imperceptible, but when combined, a cohesive signal formed, a message no machine or alien had calculated. One officer muttered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else, questioning the assumptions, the protocols, the entire chain of command that had led to this moment. The senior analyst typed furiously, trying to break down the anomaly, but the more the system tried to interpret, the more the data contradicted itself. Human unpredictability overriding logic. The youngest child stepped forward, not hurriedly, not recklessly, just forward. And the air seemed to respond, the entity pulsing slower. Almost hesitant. It was as if every calculated response, every predetermined reaction had been paused, reconsidered. The children had not moved because they were fearless. They had moved because the rules they were expected to obey no longer applied. And in that subtle shift, in that tiny act of movement, the first real doubt spread across the alien observers. A doubt that humanity had been underestimated in ways they could not yet fully comprehend. The room was still, quiet, but charged, like a storm that had paused, gathering strength before the next lightning strike. The entity shifted slightly, a low hum vibrating through the chamber, scanning, analyzing, recalculating every variable it had assumed was fixed. The children stood their ground, eyes steady, faces calm, but inside hearts raced, adrenaline mixing. With instinct, every sense alert. The adults behind them were tense, unsure how to respond. How to reassert control over something they had thought was simple to contain. Then, a soft mechanical voice echoed through the chamber, translating alien protocols, stating observations, but the words faltered, looping, repeating, signaling confusion. Subject: Group exhibits cohesion beyond expected parameters. Resilience exceeds baseline thresholds. Non-compliance consistent. The technicians paused. Glances exchanged. The same question in every mind. Have they underestimated humanity? A child near the front tilted her head slightly, curiosity in her expression, and the entity seemed to react, adjusting its internal glow, patterns slowing, focusing. One officer whispered, almost in disbelief, that the data suggested these humans were adapting in real time, predicting outcomes, responding to pressures before they occurred. The room was still, but every observer could feel it, a subtle tension, a growing awareness that the old rules no longer applied. And somewhere far above the control deck, a single console flashed red. An alert for escalation probability, a warning that humanity's presence could no longer be ignored. The transmission did not go out as a warning. It went out as a confession. The alien systems that had quietly labeled the cargo as rejected had never planned for humans to understand the data. But human engineers had a habit of pulling meaning from places it was never meant to survive. Across listening posts, relay stations, and neutral trade hubs, the message propagated, not loudly, not dramatically, but persistently. Like a crack spreading through glass. Species designation human. Cargo status formally rejected. Adaptive resilience exceeds containment models. Behavioral defiance persistent across developmental stages. Recommendation isolation no longer viable. Those words reached species that had never met a human face to face. They reached governments that had voted on humanity's fate without ever expecting humans to see the ballots. They reached corporations that had quietly profited from genetic filtration programs designed to remove unpredictability from the universe. And they reached the ones who had signed off on dumping 12,000 children near Earth. For the first time, responses did not come with confidence. They came fragmented, delayed, contradictory. Some called for quarantine. Others demanded negotiation. A few suggested immediate sterilization of the region, but none of them could agree on how to deal with a species whose children had already broken the predictive models before they could even read. On Earth, the children were no longer being tested. They were being listened to, not interrogated, not dissected, but asked simple questions by people who were slowly realizing the answers did not fit the narrative they had inherited. What do you want? What do you feel? What did they tell you? And the answers were not angry, not vengeful, but unsettling in their clarity. They told us we were mistakes. They told us we would never belong. They told us we were too much. The military watched quietly as doctors, teachers, and engineers began building systems around the kids instead of over them. The scientists stopped trying to isolate the anomaly and started documenting the pattern. These children did not resist authority because they were aggressive. They resisted because they expected choice. They adapted faster not because they were enhanced, but because they were used to surviving without permission. And when the alien entity that had once scanned them adjusted its internal logic one final time, it did something unprecedented. It disengaged. No threat response. No containment escalation. Just a silent withdrawal of influence, as if it had reached a conclusion it could not process any further. Across deep space, ancient monitoring systems updated their logs. Humanity no longer classified as emerging. Humanity no longer classified as compliant. Humanity designation revised to uncontrollable variable. The galaxy had finally noticed Earth, and it was already too late to decide what to do about it. Years later, historians would argue about the moment everything changed. Some would point to the discovery of the ship, others to the release of the data. A few would argue it happened much earlier, the moment someone decided dumping children was safer than dealing with them. The truth was simpler. It changed when humanity chose not to become what the galaxy expected. The children grew, not into weapons, not into rulers, but into something far more disruptive. They became adults who had learned early that authority could be wrong, that systems could lie, and that survival did not require permission. They became scientists who questioned assumptions others accepted as law, diplomats who refused to negotiate from fear, explorers who did not ask whether they were allowed to exist somewhere before stepping forward. And when alien delegations finally arrived at Earth, cautious and rehearsed, they were not met with retaliation. They were met with boundaries. Clear ones. Humans did not demand apologies. They did not demand reparations. They simply made it known that no species would ever again decide the worth of human children without consequences. The galaxy learned something uncomfortable that day. Humans were not dangerous because they were strong. They were dangerous because they remembered. They remembered being studied. They remembered being discarded. They remembered that someone had looked at 12,000 lives and labeled them cargo. And they built a future that ensured no one would ever make that mistake again. Far beyond Earth, in systems that once believed themselves untouchable, quiet revisions were made. Human trade routes flagged as high priority. Human diplomacy marked unpredictable. Human retaliation potential left deliberately uncalculated, because some variables, once introduced, cannot be contained. And somewhere in the archives of a long, forgotten alien database, the original designation still existed unchanged, a relic of arrogance. Rejected cargo. It was the last time the galaxy ever underestimated humanity.